Are there other ways that you have found for somebody to find out what they're naturally good at?
Well, I love those questions your friend asked you because he was getting underneath, he was getting to the essence. He wasn't so interested in the form. It's like, okay, marketing, but what's the essence? Like, what are the actions you're doing? What are the emotions that are coming out of you? Like, what about that do you love? And it reminds me of a favorite question I love to ask people and clients is, what did you love as a kid? You know, what did you really love playing? What did you really love doing? So I want to turn that question back to you. What did you really love as a kid? What did you love playing? What did you love doing? What were your passions?
So I've asked that question to myself many times, and because of many coaches, thankfully. And what I found about myself was that I absolutely loved. I was one of those kids that I would take a board and have chalk and then start writing on the board and start teaching my friends. I was not an A student myself. I was a B student. But I was coaching or teaching C students, basically. Yeah. I was one of those where we used to have those rims of paper. Underneath, we'll put carbon copies, and I would do math and physics and chemistry. These were my favorite subjects. Tell stories, and that's how I'd remember history. So those were my things. So I really loved teaching, which seems to be now part of what I do. And also I loved media. I loved watching movies. I loved the understanding of how movies were built or created, the stories behind it. And history books, I couldn't remember the dates of events. I couldn't cram that information, but I could tell myself a story of how World War II happened. And then that defined who were heroes and villains. Yeah. And then kind of tell that story to myself. And that's how I would remember history. That's how I would, teaching somebody else is how I would remember math, or I would be able to do decent in math and physics and chemistry, which are difficult subjects. But that's kind of how I did it.
Yeah, you found a creative way to do it. I love it. And that says so much to your nature. Yeah. Right? Because the things that you come naturally, and then there's the things we nurture, like our gifts and talents that we've nurtured. And so that natural part of you that loved to problem solve, that love to take information and share it with other people, that's just part of your nature. And you've nurtured it over time by putting time and energy into doing those things. You didn't like ignore that part of you and go like, I'm going to be a computer scientist, you know, because that wasn't in alignment with anything that, you know, was truly in your nature. You've nurtured it in other ways. You know, and for me, I think back to my childhood, and what I loved was being a teacher as well, lining my stuffed animals up and sharing information with them and teaching them. And in so many ways, that's what I do now. So I think that's a good question people can start to ask is, you know, what did I really love as a child? And even if you don't remember your childhood, because most of us don't remember a lot of our childhood, but you can tap into like, what were some of the games I liked to play? Or what did my parents tell me I really loved? Or, you know, did I really love being outside? Or did I really love arts and crafts? We all have something we can pull from.
So let's say somebody is this cross-section. One thing is, let's go back to your childhood. Let's try to discover what was really firing you up to find your nature, if I may. If somebody's struggling with that, is there a set of questions that you have for them or an exercise that would help them reflect? Struggle for me. When I started, I was like, I don't remember what I was good at. Yeah. Like I don't remember a lot of my childhood. Yeah, I just remember the highlights. Yeah, I just remember
the highlights or the lowlights.
Yeah, or the lowlights. Actually, more lowlights than highlights.
That's probably the way the brain works.
Yeah. So I remember it took me a minute when I kept doing this exercise again and again and again, because I didn't have the right kind of coaches that could guide me at the time. This was early on, and it was only in time that I recognized, oh, you know what? I used to just sit down with my history books and tell myself the story, because I couldn't remember for the life of me the dates they wanted me to remember in India, or when what happened and who did it. So I would tell myself stories instead of actually reading, because it was so boring. Like history books are boring as hell. Yeah. Textbooks, I mean, history books can be interesting, but history books, textbooks are boring because they're full of just data. Yeah. But if you tell it like a story, it's fascinating. Yeah. So I would tell myself the story of how World War II ran out, and who was the evil guy and who was the winning guy, and whatever the story I wanted to tell myself to kind of really remember what the heck happened. But it took me a while. Is there a way that you have found that works really well for somebody to be able to kind of lean into, if not all of their childhood, just to be able to find that nature part of it?
Well, you said something important. You said until I started working with coaches and people that could help me. So having guides is a really important aspect, because having someone that can help illuminate blind spots and ask you, like that conversation with your friend, like just asking somebody the right question can open up a whole world of possibility and memories that you didn't even know were there. So that would be one step. The second step is just to ask yourself really, like, what do I love right now? One of my favorite questions to ask clients is, what do you do? Like, what's something that you engage in or that you do that time just stops? It could be 3 hours and you're like, oh my gosh, that was 3 hours? And someone might say, well, for me, it's like shopping. I'm like, great, let's talk more about that. What do you love about shopping? And you get really specific, because again, your friend asked great questions. You said, oh, I really love, marketing, but he wanted to go deeper. Okay, what are the ingredients of marketing? What is the essence of marketing that you really love? So if you don't remember your childhood, fine, not a problem. Really go, okay, what do I really love doing right now? And then another important step is to look at what in your life you don't like. Like ways you show up, things you do, things you say yes to, tasks in your job, tasks in your life, whatever it is, like what are the things that just deplete you? And what are the things that you just do not look forward to? And those are really good clues too, because it's like, okay, these are things that I've brought into my life or that are in my life that aren't really me and that I don't really love. And so why am I doing those things? And not from a judgmental perspective, but from a curiosity perspective. I think when we're talking about anything really, but especially identity, we want to hold that childlike wonder and curiosity. Curiosity is one of the most powerful and underused emotions and ways of being out there. Like if we could all just be more curious about ourselves, about other people, about our lives, but that curiosity about, all right, well, what isn't working in my life? And I think a lot of us are afraid to ask that question, because a lot of us are like, well, man, if I'm really honest about my job, what does that mean? If I'm really honest about my marriage, what does that mean for me? And so it can be really confronting questions. So I want to say to people who might be a little scared to ask those questions is, just because you ask the question and get some information doesn't mean you have to blow up your life right this second. But by not even allowing yourself to go there, you're getting further and further and further from your essence.